And welcome in to be our guest. We're very happy again this week to have Father Manuel Williams, and he's the pastor, administrator of Resurrection Catholic Mission. You know, the mission's been there for how many, 60 years now?
No, we were established formally in 1943.
43, that's right.
So we celebrated our 75th anniversary a few years ago, so we're almost 80 years now.
My goodness, my goodness. And still, it's the church and the school. Is the school pretty active?
Church and the school. We have been able to keep the school afloat with great support from several local donors here. And the Sisters of the Resurrection, who for many years worked there at Father Walters and at the Milton Road residence, established a foundation a few years ago as their numbers are getting lower and they have resources. So we've been able to get support from them, from LeBaron Boone, who's a parishioner of the parish, Dr. Alfred Seawright, who's a local businessman here, and Ava DuVernay, whose family grew up at Resurrection Parish, who's the great producer and director of films out in Hollywood. So this year we're looking at an enrollment probably of about 100 children.
Good.
And again, they come from 10 zip codes.
Wow.
In the greater Montgomery area.
That's great. Yeah. That's great. Well, last week we were talking a little bit about, you know, we're looking at the new wave of things and how they're running in the country right now. And one of the things I've talked to you about is the fact that how strong should and I know you're the pastor of that church, but how strong should religious leaders be in being able to work with their congregations to make sure that there's harmony, because that seems to be the big bugaboo out there right now. Is that we're not seeing harmony.
Indeed, I think one of the tragedies of perhaps maybe the last 50 years is our nuclear families have become somewhat isolated.
Yes.
I grew up in the late 50s, early 60s, and 70s, and part of what it meant for me growing up in my family was every summer I was sent to stay. At the time when I was ordained in 1987, I had 4 great-grandmothers who were still alive.
Wow.
4. The first funeral, maybe the second funeral that I did as a priest, was one of them. But as a kid, both, grade school up until probably the time I started junior high school, they would send me to sit with one of those old ladies every summer in some capacity. And my mother's grandmother's mother was the one I spent the most time with. And so there was this passing down of stories about the family. There was this passing down. She was not Catholic, but she was a very devout Baptist. There was this handing down of prayer. I can remember people coming to her house on Sunday afternoons, and all the ladies would be dressed in white, and they would have these prayer meetings, and they would start to sing these spirituals and these hymns. There were stories about my crazy relatives. Her brother, John, was a notorious man. She tells this really funny story of him having a Model T car, and that he was such a scoundrel that the cars didn't have headlights. And so he would make his wife stand on the running board with a lantern so he could see how to drive at night. I said, really, Uncle John, was that mean? She said, he was a scoundrel. Those kinds of interactions are missing now because too often grandparents are hundreds, if not thousands of miles away. We don't have the kind of, and the church needs to be able to promote this more, interactions between young children and middle school children and teenage children that they need to have with people in their 60s and 70s and 80s who can pass on some of that wisdom. And it also gives them compassion for people as we go through the aging process, which if they're blessed by God, they will experience. So I think our parishes and our faith communities are challenged to find ways to have more interaction between those generations, because that brings a sense of unity.
Yeah, and I think obviously from the pulpit, I don't know if preachers are able to say, look, here's what we really need to be doing, as opposed to just saying, okay, this was today's reading and this is the just to,
don't give a exegesis of the word.
Right, yeah.
And it's the difference.
Get into some reality kind of situation.
A charge.
Yeah.
An invitation.
Absolutely.
A challenge.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
And let people be able to because I think when people interact, they find out that we're so much alike. It's unbelievable. Yeah. But a lot of times you get young kids that are misguided, and that becomes the problems.
And I see it even in our school. One of our most popular days is when the children get to bring their grandparents. And again, because of dislocation and families being so mobile and scattered
Sure.
around the country, the principal and the staff have been real sensitive to the fact that, okay, this family, they don't have grandparents. Maybe they're deceased or maybe they're away. And so we'll find surrogates. And so
Right.
that every child has that experience of interacting with an older adult.
Which is very important,
Yes.
and I think we need to find, especially like you said, the family is got kind of just pulled apart, and with the virus, it's kind of brought them back together a little bit.
Yes,
Yeah.
because we've had to
to
sequester in
Amen,
place,
amen.
and you've had to
Stay in
learn
place
to
and do
talk to each
lot
other.
of different things.
Yeah,
That's
you,
right.
You can't get all your meals at the fast food places now like you used to could. So you people are cooking more and they're sitting around the table and eating more, and that's not a
Right.
bad thing.
Right. There's so much out here about the fact that we need to defund police departments. That's probably
Bad word.
it's a bad. Well, and it's stupid. I mean, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
without law enforcement, you're not going anywhere. And hopefully, there's going to become more of a union between people and the police to learn, because obviously there's you probably may have police officers in your
I have a
church.
couple police officers in
Yeah.
the parish.
So I mean, so they're somebody's
Yeah.
father, mother, sister, brother,
Yeah,
and
good
they
people.
want to go out and do the job.
I have
You know,
a assistant DA in the parish. The best explanation I've heard of that is, and it makes me think, we expect police, law enforcement, and teachers to be frontline for every problem we have in the country.
right?
And so if we could take resources, instead of a domestic violence situation, calling the police unless it's violent, when it's a mental health issue or an
Yes.
addiction, let's hire some social workers. Let's
Amen.
hire some family therapists.
Right.
When somebody breaks in your house, you want the police. When
Yes,
somebody
yes.
is threatening you in a violent way,
Yes.
you want the police. But we can't keep piling stuff on their
No,
expectations
that's right.
and not giving them the resources, the training, the skills to be able
Right.
to respond to those situations.
Right.
And so I think I saw a graph once that listed 90 things that they'd added to teachers and to schools'
Oh, yeah,
responsibilities
yeah.
since 1900
Yeah, yeah.
that the churches and the temples and the synagogues and the community used to do. And so we've got to figure out ways to support law enforcement and to invest resources in things that'll help keep the community safe.
Good. Well, thank you for all that you do and for the years you've done it and for being a wonderful priest. Always loved it.
I appreciate it.
Thank
and,
you.
It's
Great.
been great to work with you.
And just remember this, challenge your churches to be able to say, what can we as a church do to make this a better community? We'll be right back right after this.